What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's happening to the overall market thus far and talk about some important price action that I am forecasting for the markets thus far, what's going on with the overall market when it comes to news and data, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I break down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, as you guys can see, this thing is trying to outperform the market just somewhat as it's kind of consolidating up here. It's actually a little tiny bit in the green, and that's because we got some decent news. But the problem that I do see for Tesla is the fact that the overall market does have a risk of selling off a bit more, which could slow things down for Tesla intraday. So I want to talk about why it is possible that Tesla kind of like pops and then drops back down for today and how this could end up playing out. So let's first talk about some data. Today is Monday, March 11th, and we're going to be looking to see how things are looking. Now, at 11:30 a.m., we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions coming out. At 11, we also have the consumer inflationary expectations. So the hour of 11, right, Eastern Standard Time is when you should be looking for some volatility, as we have consumer inflationary expectations, and at 11:30 we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions. Then at 1 p.m. we have the 3-year note auction, but we'll be watching to see what volatility comes for today amidst all this data. So watch and see what happens. But all this data is coming out in preparation for CPI, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, an hour before the market opens. So we'll see what happens with CPI. So that's what you should be watching for, some volatility at 11, and then we have CPI tomorrow. For earnings, we had Ballard and ltech that just came out, and also later on today we have Oracle announcing earnings, and then throughout the week we have more retail ones like Kohl's, Dollar General, Adobe, and just a few others like that. But for now, looking at Ballard, they actually did relatively well for earnings, not nice growth, good transitions, and the revenue actually increased about 132% year over year, which is quite good. Profitability was decent overall, and the outlook was pretty nice so far, with a nice increase moving forward by about 30% in their overall net income. So a little increase right over there, which is not bad. Good earnings. That's why the share price is kind of like flat. It's a little bit in the green. But then we have ltech, which did not do as well. So I want to break down why this is actually in the red. So for the full year report, despite the fact that revenue soared up to a record $46 million for them, unfortunately, they ended up missing on their EPS. They missed on the profitability targets at 22 cents a share versus an estimated of about 0.31. So they ended up doing worse than expected when it comes to profitability. But overall, I would say that earnings were a little bit mixed, despite that the share price is still down because they missed on EPS. And that's the reason why ltech is selling off right now. Their overall guidance was so-so, but this miss in their overall profitability report is not so good, and that's why the share price is dropping. Despite that, when it comes to overall earnings, the Dow Jones fell 0.9% for the week. Same thing with the S&P 500, down 0.3%, and the Nasdaq was down 1.2%. The Dow had its worst week since October, making all the headlines. This had a lot to do with some announcements that were made, data coming out, and also like kind of like adjustments due to cyclicals. So we'll see how this continues as we are seeing bearish momentum perpetuate. Bitcoin has risen to about $71,000, once again continuing to soar to a record high. And we'll see what happens with this moving forward with cryptocurrency regulatory changes as we approach April. Moving forward for Reddit, the social media platform wants to raise $748 million into its IPO, which is good for them. Hoping they do very, very well, as a new filing is showing that in the upcoming months, the IPO is coming. And besides that, I'm not really seeing anything else. Oppenheimer was the first big winner in the 96th Academy Awards, so good for them. I heard it was a great movie. I haven't even seen it yet, but I will watch it eventually. But that's it for news. Now, when it comes to Tesla, the Tesla Giga Berlin may get power back sooner than expected, which is great news that's coming out. The exact date is not really known yet. Some dates were saying in the past, March 17th was when they could get their power back, but now others are saying that could be sooner than expected, in just a couple of days from now. So that's some very, very good news for Tesla. And with this coming back, this is going to help them kind of resume their production, get things back up, and try to keep up their tracks and many of their ambitions. So this is something very, very big for Tesla. If they end up announcing this is reopening, that's going to be bullish news. There's also another Wall Street analyst that came out and saying they're saying that Tesla has 80% Wall Street, 80%, I'm sorry, upside potential. That was Adam Jonas who came out as maintaining the overweight rating. But once again, with this potential upside, that's a possibility. He did cut his price target from 345 to 320, but that still implies 80% upside is very possible. And I do agree with that, at least going into the long term. With that being said, guys, we got some positive headlines for Tesla, but I just want to give you guys a warning as we have this gap below. Now, looking at SPY, I want to call out SPY real quick and the QQQ before I break down Tesla. We're going to switch over to the 4-hour time frame. As you can see, SPY is at this 510 area. Tesla's kind of flat right now, but the issue I do see is this. So SPY is trying to hold 509.5, the 50 EMA, this yellow line right here. You can see it's trying to hold this. We'll see if we could kind of rebound a little bit. I do want to warn you, there's a risk of us losing this and coming back down to retest it. So I see a 509.5 retest. It'll pop and drop on SPY. If we lose 509.5, expect 508.5, then 507. There's still a risk of that coming back down. Alongside Tesla, Tesla might get tracked in a very, very similar fashion alongside the QQQ. So I'm going to break down the charts in more details and show you what I'm talking about. So for Tesla, uh, if you're going to be watching resistance, we have a minor resistance at 176.6, also 177.6, and then 180. We have support at 175. If we lose this, just 173.75 and then 172. So overall, considering that there's this gap down here below, I just wanted to say that there's a possibility that Tesla kind of like pops a little bit. The market could help this pop just a bit and could try to hold up thanks to decent news. But watch that 175 support. I do think there's a risk of it kind of like popping a bit and coming back down, and we could actually come back down to fill this gap at 175, drop a little bit lower, and then just start to consolidate in this range down here. I think there's a chance Tesla gets a mini pop and then a drop. I think that there's a very good chance of that happening. I think the market may also play a big role in causing that. There's also a risk of us coming all the way down to 172 again if we lose 174 because of how the market may dictate it. And there's a risk of that because Tesla's not looking that great. It kind of popped when we opened, slowing down a bit, may pop again, but just be very, very careful with it. In order for me to turn back to bullish, I need to see this thing try to hold above 177.6. And right now, it looks kind of like it's going to pop and drop, so watch for that very carefully. Now, part of why I'm also saying that is because when you look at SPY, SPY has resistance right now. As first off, we have this, this wedge potentially forming on SPY, which is going to kind of dictate this. But we also have resistance around this 510.5 area, 511.7, and then 512. We do have this little downtrend that's being established, but we'll see if SPY gets a bounce or not. And for support, watch 510. If we lose 510, you're going to be watching the 4-hour 50 EMA around this 509.5 area. And if you lose that, a bigger drop is going to be coming all the way down to 508.5, which is down here, followed by 507.5. Now, I think what could happen is SPY kind of pops a little bit and then comes back down. And we're going to retest 509.5 and we'll have to see how it reacts. So watch the 50 EMA as confirmation. If we lose this 509.5 area, it could come all the way down to 508.5, if not 507. One of these levels will be tested, this range down here. If we end up losing 509.5, which is actually way up here. So watch for that. There is going to be a risk of us coming all the way down to the 507 to 508 area if we lose 509.5. And there is a risk of that happening. I do think it's going to retest 509.5, and we'll see if it bounces or not. But I do want to let you know there's a risk of this coming down lower to the 507 area. I do think that's going to likely happen because it's been on a big downtrend. It's still respecting the wedge, and we don't have an official breakout yet. If we get back above 512, there is potential for SPY to balance, but we're not quite there yet. I think we could drop more before we get some kind of meaningful bounce, and that could drag Tesla stock down. The QQQ, it's trying to rebound to the 438-ish area. It's getting a little bit close to that, but overall, there is a downtrend on the chart. It's still kind of respecting this wedge-like formation. And on top of that, I just want to warn you all that there is a risk of us dropping lower. So it might push to 438, then reject and start coming back down to 436. And if we lose 436, we're going to be coming all the way down to the 434s. Now, part of why I say that is because when you look at the QQQ, like right over here, the 4-hour is still showing some weakness. It still looks kind of weak. So it could tag 438 or come a little bit below that, then make its way down lower towards 434 later on. I do see that as a possibility on the chart. This also happens to resemble kind of like a head and shoulders like structure. So it kind of like bounces a little bit, just a tiny bit, then makes its way back down. So look and see if that happens on the QQQ. if we kind of pop a bit and then make our way down. If it breaks 438, it could push back up to 440 and then get the rejection. So watch and see where it gets the rejection. But I do anticipate that's going to come to at least 438 and maybe reject. The wedge does suggest that 438 is where it could reject, so watch for that carefully. So I'm anticipating a kind of like a pop and drop like move. Either we pop to 438 and reject. If we do try to break out, we could hit 440 and then reject, but I think that's less likely. We're more likely to hit 438 and then reject back down towards 436 and possibly 434. What else is dictating this is Nvidia. Nvidia is playing a big role because this thing is starting a downtrend. We had this high right here. Now we're making a lower high. And looking at the chart, we're looking for a little rebound on Nvidia. It could be retesting 874 again. It's about 878. And then if we do reject somewhere close to 880, we could be making our way back down towards this imbalance, all the way down to 850 again. If we lose that, there's 844 and 834. My prediction, we kind of push a little bit, and then we eventually make our way back down to 850, if not 844. So look for a little push and then a drop back down, and we'll see how Nvidia does from there. And finally, for Apple, I am seeing this actually potentially pushing higher, approaching this yellow trend line of resistance. We did call this move out yesterday, and Apple is showing a little bit of strength. There's also kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure, but we have to break this yellow trend line first, and we have this gap to fill up here. So if we fill this gap, if we break the yellow trend line, then we could push up to fill this gap and get closer to 175. We have to break this yellow trend line first. Okay, so watch to see if we get that break at 172.5. If we reject off this, we come back down to 170. So we'll see what Apple does. Do we get this break or not? Anyways, I want to finish the video from here. Apple's going to push and test this yellow trend line. If it breaks, we fill the gap. If we reject, we come back down to 170. So watch for that. It might try to push. It's showing some strength. But I'm just calling this out because all of this does dictate Tesla to some extent. Tesla could kind of push a little bit, kind of pop just a little here and there, then eventually make its way back down lower. I do think there's a risk of that happening. And that's because there's been so much bearish news that still has a lot of momentum that's driving Tesla down as shorting has increased. But with that being said, watch for my warnings, watch my levels, and do what you have to do, guys. I'm going to upload this as fast as I can. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys very soon in a little bit over an hour. Thank you, Tesla to the moon, and peace out.